Hello, Triple Plus gamers. In the last video, it was a really long time ago, and I would like to apologize for that because I'm just not good at video editing, and I burnt myself out trying to make the recording that I had work really well. So I decided to change the format to something a bit more informal that kind of let me put my hair down and speak to you more casually. So in the last video, we talked about how to kind of get started with Roll20. And if you stick with me, I will share with you how to make a really spectacular session 0. Hello, I'm addressing you. My friends call me Ad. That's because I'm so damn positive. And I really want to walk you guys through how to make a really good session 0. So with that said, let's take a look at Roll20. So we're looking at my Ad's Magical Noob Venture that was in the last video. And there's a cat. And I want to create some more post here. So in the last session, we talked about having a game rules post. This is where you want to put things like what books you're going to be using, attendance rules, rules of engagement, how to be respectful with other players, and be nice. So you definitely want to have that as one of your first posts. And honestly, you probably want to make sure that all of the players have engaged with that post and read it. Now, the next thing that you want players to potentially do is have a meet the party post. So what goes into this post? If you're playing with people who you're not familiar with, if these people are strangers, obviously there is a looking for a group function in Roll20 that you can use. When I first started DMing, I didn't know my players. So a meet the party post is a really powerful way to say, I am a cool person, but please don't call me Shirley. Like, it's just a, Shirley? It's just a really cool way to let the players as human beings start to know each other. Maybe put down what are your hobbies, what are some of the things you like, maybe even phone numbers if they're comfortable sharing, or email, so if someone's not around you can reach out to them and say, hey, are you okay, we haven't heard from you, etc., etc. So a meet the party post is just a really nice way to get strangers to come together. Obviously, if your party has been together for a while, you don't really need to do something like that, so just use it at your own discretion. Another good thing to use is the TTRPG Toolkit. I will put a link in the description to that. That is a really cool survey that kind of helps you figure out what are the appropriate boundaries for your different players. Some people are not comfortable with adult content. Some people are not comfortable with certain violent situations, such as violence against other players, PvP, or even violence against animals. Some of those things can be very content warning worthy or triggering, if that's a term I can use here. Another thing that you might want to establish in either the game rules or the meet the party post or in the TTRPG toolkit is how comfortable people are with things like webcams and voice chat. I have been with groups that aren't comfortable with webcam. You know, a lot of people just don't feel very confident about how they look. I've had people who aren't very confident about their voice, and so they prefer to engage in chat. And those are all things that can work. You don't have to have them all. But of course, if you don't have voice, if you don't have video, it means that you're missing a whole lot of information about the people. Like, there's a difference between, oh, that was really cool of you. Like, so, like, there's tone there, right? Like, if it's typed out, you don't get tone, and that can be so informative. Eye rolls, you don't get to see if it's on a webcam. So You will be missing some human information that can make communication so powerful for people, and just be aware of that. If any kind of argument crops up as a GM, the first thing that you should want to do is diffuse that situation by saying, hey, let's take a pause right here. What's going on? What are you feeling? What are you feeling? A lot of times it's just a miscommunication because there's not all of the information there. So the next thing you want to consider if you are playing digitally is actual game experience. So we're going to go ahead and launch into the game here. And one of the first things I like to create is a landing page. So I will put a link in the description to the landing page that I got here. Is from a Reddit user. I want to say Chef Jitsu from Reddit. And what I like about landing pages is it's a really good place to set new character tokens. You can put information about the world, information about the party, important notes, and at the beginning and end of sessions, it just gets everybody on the same page and just kind of, nobody's moving their token around in distracting ways and things like that. So it's good for both the GM and it's good for the players. So in terms of setting up a landing page, I'm going to zoom out. This is a really attractive landing page in my opinion. I don't run a whole lot of D&D campaigns, whether it's 5e, 3.5 or whatever, but this is really attractive, and they did a really good job on it. So make sure when you create the landing page, you put it on your map and background. You want to do that because if players want to move their tokens around, or you want to move things around or type things, it's on a place where you're not going to accidentally shift the image. And if you're on the map and background page and you like how everything looks, make sure that you go back to the objects and tokens page so that you're not editing where you don't expect. Like, just be really cognizant of what layer you're on. We have all done it. Anyone who's used Roll20 has forgotten what layer they're on. And if you can't do something, like if someone can't move their token or if someone can't see something, go over here and look. You can even set the opacity on things like a GM layer. So let me go to the map background. I'm going to move this to the GM layer by right-clicking on it and then saying GM layer. And you can see right here that it kind of goes into this faded out. So if I do this, it looks, you can't really tell that it's on the GM layer. But if I fade it down, it's just kind of a little hint of something. And of course, you could put enemy tokens on this layer and put it on the page. You can have secret notes that you want to reveal later. And we'll get all into that when we actually talk about gameplay. But I'm going to put this back on the map layer. And you see you've got the eye. So I want to go back to objects and tokens so we can talk a little bit about how to set up tokens. So one of the first things that you want to do after you create your landing page, and again, you want to come up here and create new page, name it landing page in the settings. Well, actually, landing page is down there, but you can see the size and adjustments there. We'll talk a bit about that as well. But the next thing that you want to do is go to your game tools and start creating some common tools. So I like to create a folder. You click add and you can select folder. Useful links. Are you using a PSRD or some sort of online resource? Do you have an Obsidian portal? I'm a little bit ambivalent about Obsidian portals. I've used a few, and with okay-ish success. Google Docs are really powerful because they allow people to edit all at the same time, and you just take those things and you put them in the generally useful links. Other things, session notes. You can either create a common notes page that just says, general session notes, after a while, it gets a bit unwieldy, and like I said, people can't edit it at the same time. But again, it's right there. So if you create it, just make sure that you set it to all players so that everyone can edit it. And what they would do is they'll put the notes here in the description. So when they save it, you can see the notes there. Another thing, party loot. So whenever, so you can enter in the party loot, or you can like maybe put it in the GM notes and then copy and paste it into the description, or you can let the party handle it themselves. It depends on how strict you want to be with that. I tend to let players just enter it in on their own. And this is something that was really cool from the TTRPG Toolkit, which is Anonymous Reporter. This is a character, so you're going to click Add, select Character, and what this Anonymous Reporter is, let's say that there's conflict, or let's say, you know, someone makes a really off-color joke or comment. You can use the Anonymous Reporter in the chat. So what that looks like is, again, you set it so that all players have access to it. And that'll be in their drop down here. And then someone can say, I am really upset about that joke. When someone uses the Anonymous Reporter, you just pause what's going on, address the issue, and just say, okay, something just happened. Can you tell us more about it? And without a person having to kind of out themselves, they can express their opinions freely. So it works really well when you have a larger party. It should work with any size group, honestly, unless there's only 2 people in the actual party. But it just gives your players more freedom to bring up potential conflict. And again, as a GM, your job isn't to be like, who said that? Just deal with the issue, honestly. So another option too, you don't have to have it, but it can be a really good way to create a safe space for, especially if you have any POC players, LGBTQ players, or, you know, just anything. So you create your game tools folder, you put the tools that you want in there, and then the next thing you want to do is you want to start creating your PC folder. Create the same way, add folder. And the reason why you want to do this, what you can do is, so let me back up, is this just kind of stops the GM I need a character sheet shuffle. So you create, all you have to do, like when you create a character, so I'm going to add character, and you can see Usrono Osag got created. You go into that, it's going to load. My internet's a little bit slow, I apologize. And then you're going to find the player who needs that character sheet, and you're just going to put it in their journal, let them be able to control it, and hit save, and boom, Bob's your uncle. They can then go in and work on their character sheet. And what's really great about Roll20 is you don't have to be logged on for them to work on it. They can work on it like the weeks or 2 weeks before the game actually starts. So once the players, you know, have their character sheet and they know who they want to play, another thing I like for my players to do is to give me character art. So let's take a look at this character, Robin Hood. You can see here the avatar is kind of what shows up on this as an icon instead of the generic body shape, and it just kind of gives you more detail. If you have someone who likes to draw, they can put a drawing of their character in here. If you have any artwork on ArtStation, like where are some really good places to go? ArtStation, Pinterest, Behance, Twitter. There's so many places to get really good character art to help your players fill out this avatar sheet, and then you can create a token. So there's a tool called Token Tools, and I'll put that link in the description. It has some really cool default borders, but Roll20 has a super nice marketplace, and we'll take a look at it in a bit, where you can create these borders for the picture. And you don't even have to use the avatar picture, but usually I do. So you create the token, and then you're going to put it in the actual character sheet. So how do you do that? So I'm going to say remove here. So let's pretend like there's no token for this, and you don't even have to create a token, because if I just drag and drop that character without a token, their token becomes their avatar picture. So that's another thing. Like, tokens are fun, the borders are really cool. It's quality of life, it's fluff, you don't have to do it. The other thing you can do is create the token using Token Tool or any kind of image editor. GIMP is free, but if you have Photoshop, Clip Studio, or anything like that, you can create it. You plop it down, and then you're going to click on it, and you're going to get this gear. So represents character. You're going to want to find Robin Hood or whoever it is, and that should automatically fill out the name here, and nameplate just shows this little plate underneath. So it can get kind of crowded. Like, if you have like a bunch of people grouped up, you can't really see the names. For the player characters, name might not be important after the first few sessions. So where this nameplate becomes really powerful is if you have NPCs, villains, or anything like that you want to be named. So we're just going to go ahead and leave that off. Token bar locations, that's talking about these three little dots up there. We'll talk about what the auras are later, but what you're going to do is make sure that you assign it a character representation from the playable characters. Next, you've got these three dots here. I like to put AC as either the green or blue dot, and I like to put the health of the character as the red dot. So if you have a character sheet, you can see here all of the options listed. Just type, like I can put in, I'm going to have to do it, I mistype, but you can put in things like HP. So let me try that again, HP. There you go. So you can do things like that, so that you're not scrolling endlessly through every field. Some of these character sheets are really dense, and what that should do, if I have that entered, is it might say something like 10 out of 10, and that'll create a bar at the top of this character token, and you can decide whether or not other players can see that or not. So that's tied to HP, and as they level up, this will automatically update. And then things like AC, you can put here. So let's say they have an AC of 10. Where that is valuable is if you are a GM that likes to hide things behind a GM screen. I've started doing this, and it's kind of an interesting feeling. I used to roll the attacks publicly and then have the players tell me what their AC was, and I don't really know what the impetus was for me to start to obscure that information, but now I just say, what's your AC? I make sure that it's in that bar, and then I started rolling the attacks behind the GM rolls command, and then I tell them if they're hit or not. It adds a little bit of tension when you do that, right? My players are high level, so it's very likely that things aren't going to hit them. And I mean, if you want to nudge the rolls a little bit, it gives you some leeway there. Not saying that you should. It's certainly an option. But anyway, that's why AC is important. And then what you do with this one, I don't know if you want to track arrows. You know, maybe they have like ammunition. You can track it here and just let them tick it down. So The other thing, GM notes, you can put in notes about the character here. I don't use this very often, but there might be some value for you to do that if you've got secrets that you want to keep track of. Dynamic lighting, we'll have a whole video about dynamic lighting, but you would set those settings here, very, like how far can they see, do they have dark vision, do they have low light vision, etc., etc. And once you get all of those details set, you're just going to hit save, and now you can see those values are updated, and you can see here, and you'll see it a bit better here, where I had those a max and min value. Now there's bars here. Once you get that all set up, that's a lot of setup, which is why I like to do it for session 0. You go back to the character, you hit edit, make sure you have the token selected, and you're going to see this button, use selected token. Bam! So why do you do that? If you just drop in the token in here without setting up the settings, when you move from map to map, there will be no settings there. By adding the settings, then adding it to the character sheet, you can move them from map to map to map. Their health can be up and down, and it's always locked into that token. That's why you want to do that. I really can't think of a reason why you would not want to have those settings. Honestly, maybe there's like a UI update that they could potentially do to make that a lot easier, but that is the way that it is right now. So if we go back to the character sheet, now that we have the token, we've got some art, we've got a name, character is in character journals. Tags I don't use too much. Don't use tags too much. Sometimes I use them for like searching for tokens. Like if I have like a rat folk villains or something like that, then adding rat folk or ranger to the tokens means that when I search, I can find them. But for most cases, I don't really need that. Some characters or some players like to put their character bio in this right here. Again, it can get really long if you want to put a lot of information there. And it's not a big deal, but after session 0, I do feel like that information becomes not as important, but it certainly can be good to have that available in case other players want to look at that character's history and maybe find some connection points there. And of course, the GM notes, again, if you've got any secrets, then by all means go ahead and add it there. As you can see from the token, they're not really connected. So the GM notes are definitely separated by whatever the artifact is. So in Player's Journal, by the way, I like to do all players for in Player's Journal and then let only a specific person edit that. And where that can be useful is, again, just exposing that information to other players that may be relevant. This is also a really good feature for if somebody's missing, you can go ahead and add them to another player's journal so that they can run that character if you, the GM, are not going to run them yourself. So you hit save, make sure you always hit save, and now everything's locked in. So we can see the character sheet here. We can see, I don't use this tab very often. Tell me in the comments if there's a whole lot of value to this tab. I have never found it if it exists. Like between the character sheet and the bio and info, I don't know why this tab is here. Great. Players have character sheets. They have common tools. They have their tokens. What is next? Let's see. Oh, and to add a character. So you saw me drag this in. Now you can see that the token is there. Players can also drag their own tokens in. Drag the name or drag this white space. Don't try to drag the hamburger. The hamburger lines are for just rearranging things. I can't tell you how many times I've grabbed the hamburger and like, oh, where's the token? Why did I put it there? Like, drag the name. Don't be a doofus like me. Macros. Macros are the next thing that I like to create. That's the jukebox. Here we go. So this little list right here. So macros that I like to create. Number one macro. No, if you're in Roll20, number one macro, talk to myself. So let's take a look at it. So I call it talk to myself, command / talk to myself. What does that do? So let's hit save here. Oops. Put it in my bar, which is down here. I have talked to myself on. You see this right here. You are now talking to yourself. So I can say anything, and the only person that can see it is me. This is like when your players get in to start messing around with stuff, make sure that tell them to create the talk to myself macro and to turn it on. Now, the only downside is that you might roll something while you have talked to myself on and roll that critical 20. That sucks. So you do have to remember to turn it off, but guess what? This is how you turn it off. You click on the button again. Yay, you're no longer talking to yourself. If you are testing your character sheet or anything else, please use talk to myself. So I just create that as a macro and I put it on my bar. All right, other macros. If you are a GM, and this beginning part of the series is for GMs, is you can create some macros for just rolling behind the scenes. And guess what? What's really nice about this is you can add in these macros a little bit of flavor. So you can see here /EM, which is emote, mysteriously rolls dice behind a screen. Look how it looks when you actually roll it. You see, like, it's got this really cool like signifier here, and the yellow says, okay, I'm only rolling this to myself. You can't do super complex things, like this is just rolling a D20. It's not me rolling for an enemy. Honestly, when I GM screen rolls like attacks, I use to talk to myself. I use to talk to myself, and I roll the attacks, and I know that they can't see it. But that D20 roll might be a roll to determine the success or failure of something really trivial, or if you can do math in your head and you know what the bonuses are, you can use that. You can also do the same thing for a D100, which can be good, roll high or low, or if someone makes like I use the gods very actively in my games, and I use percentage rolls to determine whether the god hears the character or not. So this one's a really powerful one for me as well. And there's so many other macros that you can use, but I think these are some really powerful ones. Fantasy Grounds has a really cool language feature where you can do a simulation of a language. So let's say someone speaks Aquan. Then what you can do, and I think I was creating, think the macro here. I'm going to have to copy and paste it from my notes. And I'm going to call this my foreign language macro. And let's just test it out. Great. So by using this syntax here, I can say, okay, so what's the language? Let's say it's Abyssal. Oops. So I'm going to submit that. Here's a message. You will die, mortal. Submit. Bam. So unfortunately, I didn't have a player selected, but had I done it all, then the player or character selected would have been able to see that message, and everyone publicly would have known that something was said in Abyssal. Fantasy Grounds does it really slick where they have different fonts and stuff like that. Roll20 isn't there yet. Okay. We got macros. We've got character sheets. We've got... What else have we got? We've got it all. We almost have it all. The other thing you might want to do is have some more generic pages for, like, say, combat. Like, Roll20 has this really cool feature, so I'm going to exit out. Here's a really easy way to exit out, by the way. Click on the gear, and you click on the exit game, and it brings you here. You can use this prompt to put in the character notes or something like that. I don't really use it. But what's really cool is we're going to go back to the main page of the game. And we are going to, you can see here, game add-ons. Again, this is, I think, a premium feature. So you can see there's a bunch of all of these map packs. So I'm going to, yeah, it's a pro feature. Some of these are a pro feature. So I'm going to click on this pro map pack. I'm going to add it to the game. And let's go back into the game. Bam, look at this. We've got some default maps that we can use. So for session 0, look at this map. Look at this, a handy dandy adventurer tavern map. I typically am, I appreciate the tropes of 5 adventurers meet in a tavern, the ranger's off in a corner somewhere being real, like, gloomy, sneaky, or the rogue is being real gloomy, sneaky, and then you've got, like, the bold barbarian who just wanders up to the bar and demands a drink. It's been done. Like, we can do better. We can do better. So if you are running in a adventure path, like, where does that adventure path start? I'm going to use Rise of the Rune Lords because that was my very first game that I GM'd. So I knew that it was starting with the Swallowtail Festival. So I had session 0 start the day before the campaign technically started. So everyone's prepping. So what I like to do for the session 0 character interaction, because everyone should be finalizing their character setup because we're doing things advanced, we're prepared, right? So once session 0 gets those kinks worked out, I say something, I describe the scene. I describe where are we starting. So I describe Sandpoint. What are the people like? What are the smells? What's the weather like? Who do you see walking around? Maybe a little bit introduce some of the key NPCs that they're going to be seeing. And then once you set that scene, you get that vibe and that mood, you start introducing the players. And you can ask the players who wants to introduce themselves first. A lot of times people are kind of a bit weird about that. You know, it's totally fine as a GM to say, Miro, the halfling, where are you in this scene? That takes the burden of the players figuring out, okay, who's going to go first? I don't know if I want to go first. Am I ready? It takes the burden off of them. And again, if people are comfortable with being put on the spot, and you can always ask that in advance, then the player from Miro can say, oh, well, my DM just set up this really great scene for me. Where do I want to be? Oh, I want to come in from the port. I want to have just sailed in. That's how I got here. I sailed in. And then I see the decorations. And it's like, oh, Miro, what do you look like? And that starts getting the momentum and the ball rolling for everyone to figure out how they want to introduce themselves. Are they a native to the town and they're helping with the decorations? What are they doing? So that can be really nice for the session 0. It starts getting people's creative juices flowing. It starts setting the tone for how things are going to kick off. And the other thing that I like, introduce encounters. They don't have to be fights. players often create their own encounters. Players will often, like, maybe the barbarian rolls up to the bar and is like, I demand ale. You know, I think a lot of times we as GMs, we want to be nice and be like, the bartender is terrified of this barbarian. Nah. Put some conflict in there. The bartender looks at the barbarian up and down, disgusted with the brutish behavior. I don't know who you are, son, but around these parts we have manners. Now, if you want a drink, you can ask politely. But what does the barbarian do? What does the player have the barbarian do? Like, do they keep with the trope that the barbarian is this smooth-brained brute who doesn't know how to act? Or does the barbarian decide, oh, I don't really want, oh, that's how we're playing this? Oh, I'm sorry. It's just been a long journey and I got overexcited. Please, bartender. Like, it opens things up. Think about how society really works. Think about the people that you know. A lot of my NPCs come from encounters that I have had. Like, I can almost envision how this kind of coworker gives me like a bartender in a fantasy game vibe, and that's who I'm going to emulate for this NPC. Maybe the players have some conflict, and then you have to come in and inside of the plot or inside of the game help them resolve that conflict. That just simple character interaction, not bound by anything happening in the game, can be so powerful. So play with it. I've had players completely change what they thought they wanted to play based on actually playing the character in a low pressure, no context situation. Have them do some rolls. You know, roll for diplomacy, roll an attack roll. You know, maybe they're going up against a test dummy, a training dummy or something like that. And I always tell them, you have until next session to revise your character. And then I also say you have the next 2 sessions to change your mind on anything critical. I do that because I don't want people to lock in until they've had time to kind of kick the tires. So session 0, very social way to kick the tires. The first 2 sessions usually have some sort of combat involved, and then they know how their character is going to move inside of the world, and I let them, you know, make those adjustments, and then after that, they're pretty much locked in. Is there anything else? I don't think there's anything else. Like, I hope that feels like a really powerful session 0. And I highly recommend that if you have a game coming up, try these things out and then just let me know how it goes. Again, there's so much about Roll20 and about tabletop role-playing games that I just don't know, and I love knowing things. So hit me up in the comments. Rate the video. I don't care if you like or dislike. There's a whole lot of reasons to do both, so feel free to do so. And please subscribe. Thank you. Janet!